Welcome everyone to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I am really looking forward to diving into everything Spirit has in store this month. This is a packed month, so this March energy update is one that you will likely want to refer back to, maybe even weekly, as we go through everything that's happening in March, because there is a ton happening astrologically and there's a ton happening in the energetics. So I'm going to start first with what's happening astrologically, and we'll lay that out, and then get into the messages that Spirit had to share specifically for this month, because they really tie all together. So let's dive right in. All right, so March 1st started us off with Venus moving retrograde, and so this is really kind of a call to reflect on your relationships, reevaluate them. And it doesn't have to be in a negative. Like, I think sometimes we listen to certain terms in astrology and like reevaluate your relationships. And sometimes we think, oh, yeah, I need to fix it because it's not good. Or like reevaluate means not good. But really, that can be empowering. When you take time with your partner, with your friends, whatever your relationship is, Venus is more specifically loving relationships. But when you take time to reevaluate them, like, sit with your partner and maybe bring a conversation up that's like, hey, how am I doing for you? How is it working for you? Am I fulfilling your needs? Am I holding up what you require from me to feel loved? And if not, what is it? What is your love language? Let's go over that again, right? Like, you can open up these really beautiful conversations that can absolutely deepen your connection. Right? Huge deepening of your connection. So when they say reevaluate, that can be a really positive thing. And Venus retrograde is also asking us to kind of reevaluate our creative self-expression too. So how are we expressing ourselves in this energy? What are we doing? Are you expressing your creativity in the way that you truly desire? Right? Because maybe you think, yeah, I'm creative. I work in a job where I get to use my creativity. Maybe you design graphics or something in your job and you're like, yeah, that's good. But when you really tune into it, are you really using what fills you creatively? Like, maybe what you really want to do is get a giant canvas and a whole bunch of paints, turn the music up really loud, and just paint for a whole afternoon. It's kind of like going into that heart space energy of it, and what does it really look like for you? Take the time to reevaluate what that looks like. So that's what Venus retrograde is asking us for. Then we have on March 13th, we have the first lunar eclipse of 2025. So we kick off eclipse season. We have another eclipse season that starts, I believe, in September. So eclipse season, which goes from March 13th to March 29th, which is the partial lunar eclipse on March 29th. What's really interesting is this whole eclipse season, and we call it eclipse season because for those 2 weeks, the energies are really heightening and amplifying the things that we need to see. We also find a lot of different collective events unfolding during eclipse season. It can be quite polarizing sometimes, quite triggering, but it can also be quite freeing. Eclipses can also bring the energetics of liberation because it helps crumble the things that are holding you back, whether that's like limitations of the mind, energetic traumas, emotional traumas, maybe even old ways of thinking. It can really kind of free up space, but sometimes it can also be really jarring. So with the eclipse season, something really important to consider is moving through it with your eyes wide open. That's Spirit's words, is eyes wide open. I was going to say notice what you notice because that's kind of our phrase, but Spirit is like eyes wide open. If you move through it with your eyes wide open and you observe how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're observing also in the world around you, you are way more able to make clear, concise decisions to help you move forward. And it can be way less turbulent for you as maybe it would be for others. At the same time, some of you might find eclipse season not turbulent at all, but simply freeing. Like if you picture, say you're sitting in a hot air balloon and you have the tethers to the earth right now to keep the balloon down, and all you want to do is just fly that balloon way high up in the clouds An eclipse season allows you the opportunities to cut away all of those ties and you finally get to lift off. Right? Eclipse season can also bring that too. So there's a lot of energy within the eclipse season, and it's just about like being real with what you're feeling, real with what you're thinking, and real with what you're noticing. Like don't put your head in the sand in eclipse season. That's where we get burned. But when we are aware and working with the energetics, it can work in our favor. Absolutely. So after eclipse season starts with the lunar eclipse on March 13th, we then on March 15th have Mercury going retrograde. And again, Mercury retrograde can include, miscommunications, tech issues. I often have technology issues with Mercury retrograde, which is quite interesting. However, I don't fear Mercury retrograde at all. And I don't say that in a cocky way either. I just mean that I've learned over Mercury retrogrades that they are beautiful times to turn inward and kind of see what's working for you, what's not. What would you like to kind of create? What has been waiting in the background for your energetic attention, right? Like if you've been really busy, out and about, kind of forward facing in your energetics or your work, Mercury retrograde is a great time to kind of tune inward. Maybe in the evening, you make a nice cup of tea, light some candles, put some music, get your journal out, and you kind of tune into you of what inspires you, what moves you, what are you feeling, like cleaning out the energetics within your energetic closet kind of thing. That's what we can do with Mercury retrograde. And you know what? If tech issues come in or miscommunications come in, you just kind of roll with it. It's not about creating big dramas around it. Avoid the dramas in Mercury retrograde. Rather, come back to the present moment of what really matters and roll through, keep moving forward. Okay? Then we move to March 20th, where we have the spring equinox, which is the new astrological cycle. So many people celebrate this actually as the new year. The astro cycle starts again in Aries. So there's like a brand new beginning feeling often with the equinoxes. A lot of people celebrate them too. A lot of people do a ritual of new beginnings. If you feel like you missed that new beginning ritual that many people do in January, March 20th is a great time to bring that energy in of what is your new beginning? What is your new astrological beginning as they start this cycle? So we talked about March 29th is the partial solar eclipse. Then when we move to March 30th, this is a big heavy hitter for this year. When I was talking to my two favorite astrologers, Kitty Foss and Shannon Takis, they were talking about how March 30th, Neptune moving into Aries is a huge deal. Big deal, probably one of the biggest deals of this year. And as it moves into Aries, now think about it, Aries is a fire sign, it is an action sign, it is like a warrior ready to go. Neptune represents our dreams, our spirit, higher level values, and magic. It is this like magical awakening energy, and it's moving into this warrior energy. And it hasn't been in Aries since 1861. And so if we take this combination, it really is the combination of the spiritual warrior. And that's not necessarily in aggression, but in personal power. So Neptune moving into Aries on March 30th is really going to help us break some new ground spiritually. And so this is where the insights on the podcast today transition from the astrological insights to the insights from Spirit. And this is why I wanted to share all of those first, because everything Spirit gave me aligns with what's happening. And so I like that because it really shows how astrology is so significant in our lives. It is a significant understanding and tool to help understand the energetics so that we can work with them and move with them, with the ebbs and flows of the universe as we move through our day. And when we work with it, we become way more powerful. So with Neptune moving into Aries, Spirit is saying we are breaking significant new ground spiritually. It's basically like a new level is opening up for you. A new level of spiritual freedom, a new level of maybe spiritually questioning things, energetics, higher consciousness, what is source, universe, God, creator, a new level of connecting into higher capacities of consciousness, which could open up your spiritual gifts like psychic gifts from clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, all of the clairs, which is your ability to see, hear, and feel spirit or higher dimensions. Those are all going to be amplified, a new level of awakening. And I want to share a little bit about how awakening often happens. This is generally, okay, so everybody will have their own experience, but oftentimes, I'll put it that way, oftentimes people will have this kind of bigger waterfall event of spiritual experiences. So that can sometimes happen from like an ayahuasca journey, a psilocybin journey, a kundalini awakening. It can also just sort of happen naturally for somebody where all of a sudden they're starting to hear spirit, they're starting to see spirit, they're starting to get premonitions, or like several different, aspects of spiritual communication start to happen to them, and it kind of blows them open. And they're like, oh my goodness, what is this? They're kind of thrust into the experience of higher consciousness. So the world that they lived in before, suddenly they're seeing it in like hypercolor. And this can be really overwhelming, but here's the thing. The energetics are really supporting this being more tangible than overwhelming. So if we would have taken the same energy before, say 10 years ago, it would have been very overwhelming to the collective consciousness of everybody because there wasn't enough higher consciousness in that collective pool. But now there is. And so what this means is your brain already naturally has a higher capacity to understand the changes that you can move through, that you may undergo, that you might experience, because it's already swimming in that collective pool. And that collective pool that I'm talking about is like, that 100 monkeys experiment where they had 100 monkeys on one continent doing something, learning a new tool. And then they noticed that monkeys on another continent, which had no contact with these other ones, were able to quickly learn how to use the tool in the same way because the other ones had already figured it out. And so what they realized within the quantum realm is the energetics fill up this sort of quantum pool of knowledge capacity. Once it's discovered, it's then a part of that quantum pool. That's how the monkeys on another continent can tune into energetics and inspiration and pull from this quantum pool of how to use this tool because it's been discovered already. So the same thing goes right now. Because so many people have been awakening and there's more conversations about consciousness, the quantum pool of information, of knowledge that your brain is already attached to is fully available. So any of your spiritual awakenings that you have, your brain will have a higher capacity to understand it because it can pull from the quantum pool of energetics, so that the brain isn't so overwhelmed by, oh my goodness, what is this? I can't understand it. It can pull from that quantum pool to be like, oh, okay, this could make sense, and this could make sense, and this could make sense. So the energetic support for this new, breaking new ground is high. It is really high. And this is where we get to come into that spiritual warrior energy, because when you think of a warrior is not someone that is hiding or unsure. A warrior, when we think of them, they are confident in what they know. They have practiced what they know. They know where their resources are. They know how to be resourceful. It's because they've had that experience. They have that support in their experience. The quantum field is supporting the energetics needed for our brains to understand what's happening, okay? So this also means, though, it's really supporting our brain for higher collective consciousness and communication with the galactics. So Neptune moving where it's moving is also going to help our brains to understand the communications from the galactics on a personal level. So remember how I've been talking about that we are awakening into this disclosure that is happening more on a one-to-one, right? Like your galactic guides want to connect to you to show you what's happening, whether that's, in a vision, in real time, in intuitive insights. They're wanting to make that connection with you and the disclosure happen with you so that you are not overwhelmed by some big event, whether that be real or fake. You have your own discernment and your own resonant frequency to connect with them. So this new ground, this new level opening up for you allows you greater connection. And it's really humanity moving up and being given the opportunity to move up into that galactic level of communication, which is really quite cool. Like the stage is being set for this to happen. So again, you may see an increase in psychic skills, psychic awareness. You might be really drawn to understand more stories. And what I would recommend, if you really are kind of spurred into action of like, what is this? What is going on? I found for me, when things were really opening up, I loved reading people's stories of how they awakened, how they opened. I read lots of different books of different psychics and mediums about how it was for them. And that's why when I wrote my book too, I wrote about how my awakening happened as well as my NDE. It wasn't just my NDE, it was also what was it like as a kid, because I wanted to share the stories. So if anybody feels an interest to read my book, it's called Avalon to Aurora, A Medium's Near-Death Experience. You can find it on Amazon. But I encourage you to read lots of people's stories. It'll help you feel more grounded in your own unique journey, because we are all journeying to awaken at some point, right? Now, here's the interesting thing. So as this new energetic level is opening up, the polarity of it, or the opposite, the duality of it, is that the dark will show more of its colors. So this is something we really need to recognize, that as we awaken collectively as a group, we will see more of the other side. I'm just going to call it dark. It's just the easiest that way. The dark. And I'm not judging the dark. It is just the energetics that are pulling against the light. Okay, we'll put it that way. So people choose where they are, in what state, what camp. And I don't mean geographical state. I just mean like energetic state of consciousness. And at any time, anyone in the dark can choose to come to the light by being truthful in who they are and what they're about for themselves, right? It's when somebody feels they want to see themselves in the mirror and accept all of their light and dark, they can move into the light, okay? But what we're going to see with this is we're going to see a greater rising of the dark, almost like an abrupt, egoic, obnoxious kind of dark energy. Like just almost flaunting is how I'm being shown it from spirit right now. And that is in response to the light, to that Neptune energy. So just something to consider, because if you start to see a lot of things come through on the collective and you're like, what is this? How is this okay? How is this possible? It is that energetic of the dark trying to balance or overtake the light. But the light is really being supported by a huge planetary shift. So it's just, again, notice what you notice, observe it, choose your discernment, stay in your lane of your energy, of what brings you in the direction of where you want to go. Now, what's also interesting is if we touch back now on the eclipse season, Spirit said the eclipse season will reveal your weaknesses to make you stronger. And when they first said that, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's okay. And they're like, no, like this can be a very empowering thing. And it can be something really simple of, maybe you apply a lot of empathy or sympathy to something that actually kind of takes you down, and you don't have a good enough boundary to hold yourself in your own energy while knowing that certain thing is happening, right? Like it's showing you where your weakness is so that you can fortify your own energy, so that you can stay with a cup full instead of a cup half empty. You can stay with a full cup to then give from your overflowing cup. Because what happens is if we live in a world where everybody has half a cup and they're trying to give from their half a cup, well, then everybody's really at kind of a quarter of a cup or even less than. And nobody can fill up their cup energetically. So we need boundaries, and we need to know where our weaknesses are so we can either heal them, reinforce the strength around it, set a boundary, become aware so we don't interact in that. Again, like whatever the situation is for you, it's bringing you the awareness so you can be smarter about what you're choosing, which helps you maintain your energy. And when you maintain your energy, you're help filling that collective quantum field of energy full of the ability to hold a boundary. It's all connected. Everything that we do connects into the collective. Now, I want to finish the podcast here on one of the coolest points about this month. And it's really interesting because we have Venus going retrograde, and I can't remember, so don't quote me on this, but I think Venus is in retrograde until sometime in April. I'm not sure, so you'd have to double check that. I should have checked that before. But with this reevaluation and this creative self-expression, it also, though, is opening the door for love to rise exponentially. So sometimes we think retrograde, negative, but this is really allowing an open door to like a beautiful garden. Like if you're willing to reevaluate, reassess, have the conversations, or just have the awareness within self, creatively self-express, you're opening a door to a beautiful, beautiful garden, a vast, colorful, fruitful, fragrant garden. And what that opens up is divine sacred union. And so I wanted to leave you all with the concept that divine sacred union is also really on the rise, whether that be with self, whether that be with spirit, or whether that be with a partner, a physical partner. So divine sacred union with a partner, again, can be deeply transformative, can allow you to reach higher states of consciousness when two people come together to share in the energetics of sacred union, sacred breath, sacred sensuality, sacred sexuality, in an energy that is equaled and paired in vulnerability and in trust. And that's why those conversations really open up that pathway for divine sacred union, right? So just notice what's happening in your relationship. How can you start the conversation? Your connection to sacred union might not start right away with divine sensuality, right? You may be in a position where you're like, I'm not quite ready for that, but I'm going to test out if they'd be willing to have a conversation of, hey, I really like when you do this for me. When you make me coffee in the morning, it makes me feel loved and cared for. How do I help you feel loved and cared for? Oh, you do this and this. Well, how could I make that better? What could I do differently? Sometimes the conversation allows for a softening of the edges, which allows for it to become something so much more. If you're at the point where you are in divine sacred union with your partner and a deepening of it, your vulnerability and you're willing to explore those realms actually allows you to also explore the higher realms of consciousness, right? Like union between two people can open up your consciousness sometimes better than any kind of like meditation, or better than a psilocybin experience or an ayahuasca. Like sometimes the union between two energies can awaken consciousness like something else. That's why there's so many ancient scripts about it. But it's okay if you're not there. There's a journey to it, and there's a journey about where you're at and what's happening for you. But it starts with the reevaluation, which can lead to sacred union. Now, sacred union is not only, though, for partnerships. So you could also enter into a divine sacred union with spirit. And that doesn't mean it's a sexual experience with spirit. That's not what I'm talking about. But it is a sacred, vulnerable experience where you open up your whole being, your mind, body, spirit, to a deeper connection with spirit. You could even, what spirit is showing me right now, depending on where you are in the world, of course, but you could have an opportunity to, for example, lay out in a meadow at nighttime, lay in this meadow, staring up at the stars, heart to the universe, universe facing you, you staring at the stars, speaking your absolute truths about who you are, where you're at, how you're feeling. You begin to merge into this awe and wonder with your connection to the land as you deepen your energy into the land. And then you feel this pull and connection up into the universe, and suddenly you feel like you are one complete thing. You feel connected to the universe, connected to the earth, connected into you. That is a divine sacred union within the realms of spirit, within the realms of the energy of the universe. You could have a spirit guide come forward. That is also very much available right now in the energetics. Now, at the same time, if you're like, I can't even imagine that, like, how do I even do that? Then start with divine sacred union with self. It always starts with self. And that is you diving into exploring how you can connect deeper with self. And sometimes for some people who have just been such givers, and so many of you are givers, like you give so much of yourself, you barely have anything left for you. And sometimes the very entry into divine sacred union with self is to stop for a moment and ask yourself, what do you want? What can I do for self right now to feel so nourished? And maybe it is putting your phone away so that no one can call you for an hour, right? And maybe it is taking a bubble bath, or maybe it is making yourself a tea or a meal that you want so much. Like, here's the thing. Have you ever had almost like a date night for yourself? And that could be, you decide, okay, Friday night, no one is going to bother me. No one is going to be around here to, like, I'm going to put my phone away. I will tell my bestie, hey, listen, I'm putting my phone away. I just need a night off. If you really need me, come to my house if there's an emergency, right? That way someone can contact you. Don't have to worry about it. You pick what you want to have for your meal. You go out to the grocery store and you enjoy the process of picking out the things. You don't rush it. This is so important for divine sacred union with self. We cannot rush it. And so you have to almost like fall in love with the whole experience of it. Going to the grocery store, picking out each favorite piece of fruit or vegetable or whatever it might be. Think about how it will all come together. You buy your stuff, you bring it home, you put on some music that inspires you maybe, or maybe it's peppy music and you're dancing in your kitchen. You make this luscious meal for self. You take the time in it. You smell the ingredients. You explore all the senses of it. Then you eat your meal and you eat it with gratitude for this experience of putting all of these things together to create this wonderful flavor all for you. And the reason why this happened is because you decided to gift it to you. And then maybe after that meal, you have a beautiful meditation or a bubble bath or like whatever it is. But we can take the same Friday night where you're by yourself and you need to eat, right? I gotta eat. I gotta figure something out. Gotta go to the grocery store. Or you can put a whole energy to it of like, hey, Friday night is for me to tune into me. What do I need? What do I want for dinner? And you make the entire thing sacred. Oftentimes when you create a sacred energy like that, like a sacred bubble, later if you go into a meditation and you sit quietly, maybe you do a walking meditation, when you tune in, you're going to have an easier time hearing yourself, hearing your soul's desires. Maybe even have an easier time hearing your spirit guides, spirit intuition. That presence for self, that willingness to give self that energy and that time, that sacredness. When we make something sacred, we open up the energies. It's like a flower that blossoms. When we take the time to make something sacred, the energetics blossom and there's so much more available. So that's something to consider, and I really wanted to leave that thought with all of you. Through the energy of March, March has so much happening, but through that energy, you can give yourself the greatest gift by slowing down, having presence, and creating sacred moments that always, always, always start with self. And from there, they can expand into spirit, they can expand into other relationships, friendships, divine partnerships, you name it, but it always starts with self. So with the craziness of March, check in with self routinely. Reevaluate self routinely, and March can be so, so empowering for you. All right, everyone, I will leave that with all of you. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and I really hope you make the most of March. Again, you will maybe want to re-listen to this again to feel inspired again if that's what it brought forward for you. And I wish you all the best. So I will leave that for now and see you all next week.